Hey there everyone, Matt here, and in this video I'm going to talk about intrusive thoughts. So let's start off by just simply defining what is an intrusive thought. And in this short 3-part video series, what I'm going to do is actually not only explain what intrusive thoughts are, but why a lot of what we do to try to get rid of thoughts actually makes them worse. And then in the third video, what I'm going to do is actually teach some different strategies and tools you can use to help kind of reduce the frequency of thoughts and then kind of quiet that mind down. So in this video, let's just start off by talking about what are intrusive thoughts. And that can really be defined as anything that is popping up in your head, any thoughts, images, urges, memories, right, that kind of pops up out of nowhere, and that more importantly is unwanted, right? Hence the name intrusive thoughts, right? They intrude your mind. And so when we're talking about intrusive thoughts, if it's in the realm of obsessive compulsive disorder especially, they kind of fall into 3 main categories, right? And so category number 1 is unwanted violent thoughts, right? And so this can be various thoughts. This can be violent thoughts towards yourself or others, or worrying that you might have done something harmful to someone, or worrying that you might do something harmful in the future. Anything that's related to kind of violence or hurting people. The second category is unwanted sexual thoughts. Now this can be unwanted images of things that, happening in a sexual nature. This could be worrying about your sexual orientation, or worrying that you may or may not become a pedophile one day, anything in that category. And then in the third category is unwanted religious thoughts. Now this can have anything to do with any kind of thoughts towards religious figures. It can have any kind of doubts regarding if you're going to heaven or hell, or various other things, right? I mean, all these are very broad categories, and people experience thoughts on kind of the whole spectrum of all these categories. But if we really break down just the concept of intrusive thoughts, they usually fall into one of those 3 categories. Now, the key point that I want to introduce in this first video is this idea that having an intrusive thought is not the problem, right? It's actually how you react to those thoughts that is the problem. And so what do I mean by that? Well, let's just take a simple example of an intrusive thought where if I was driving along the road and I was driving on a bridge, that I had the intrusive thought of, well, what if I just drove my car off the bridge, right? That would be an example of me experiencing an intrusive thought. Now, if you actually talk to most people, almost every single person experiences intrusive thoughts, right? We all have thoughts that we're like, oh, what is that thought? Or like weird random thoughts that we experience about all sorts of categories. So having an intrusive thought itself is not necessarily anything abnormal, right? And so when someone comes to me, oftentimes my clients, one of the main things they'll say to me is, well, how do I get rid of my thoughts, right? How do I stop my thoughts? And oftentimes what I tell them is like, well, you can't just turn off your thoughts, right? But there are strategies obviously you can do to help kind of quiet your mind down. And but one of the major things that you need to realize if you struggle with intrusive thoughts is it's not about having the thought, it's about reacting to the thought. So let's flash back to the example I was giving of, well, if I was driving on this bridge and I had a thought of, well, what if I drove my car off the bridge? That's me experiencing the thought. Now, right then and there, after I experience the thought, I actually have a choice, right? And this is where the entire battle of intrusive thoughts, this is where the battle lies. It's 2 choices. I can react to the thought, right? And I can give it credibility, or I can let it go and just keep going with my day. And this is where we oftentimes find ourselves in this battle. And when we react to the thought, it can be any way you can react to it, right? And so you can start trying to suppress a thought. Oh, I would never drive off a bridge. And you start arguing with it, right? Or you start questioning why you had that thought, right? And you start saying, well, what does that thought mean? Why did I have that? Does that mean that I really want to do that? And anytime you start going down that rabbit hole right there of questioning, doubting, even entertaining that thought, that's you reacting to it, right? That's you giving that thought credibility. And so conversely, the other option is just realizing like, oh, yep, just had that thought, and just moving on with my day. And I just continue driving, doing what I was doing. Or sometimes we react by actually physically things. So maybe if I'm about to drive on a bridge and I have a thought and I stop and drive around the bridge, right? That's me reacting to that thought as well. So again, you can react to thoughts physically and mentally, and those are what we often call in the obsessive compulsive world of compulsive behaviors, right? So compulsions can be both physical and mental. And a lot of times they're actually mental, and we don't even realize we're doing compulsions, right? And so what I'm going to show in video number 2 is why doing those mental compulsions of suppressing thoughts or blocking thoughts or trying to replace thoughts actually makes obsessive thoughts worse. And then in video number 3, again, I'm going to teach a few strategies that I use and teach to people to help kind of quiet that mind down. But again, to really recap this video, the main thing that I want you to remember is that having an intrusive thought is not the problem. It's how you react to the thought that is actually the problem, and that fuels that fire and trains your brain that that thought is something that you actually need to be concerned about. Okay, so I'll see you over on part 2 of this series, but before you go, please subscribe to this channel and make sure that you like it, and so you get notified every time I release new videos. And then also right below this video, I actually have a link where I put together some free resources that are designed to kind of help you identify your different compulsive behaviors if you struggle with intrusive thoughts. So all you need to do is just click the link below this video. You'll be taken to a page where you can download those resources for free instantly. And so I will see you over on video number 2 in this Intrusive Thoughts series.